Welcome to The State of Us.
Beyond mainstream cable news and party lines, with a millennial and a boomer, The State of Us pushes past the noise and uncovers all the issues that matter.
Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The United States Air Force is giving a boost to the potential of flying taxis. Yes, flying taxis. It's pretty much Lance's worst nightmare. One answer to America's recycling problems: make big brands pay. Consumer product makers are under pressure to pitch in as customers and lawmakers pay more attention to plastic waste. And student loan losses are costing the U.S. more than $400 billion. $400 billion. That's a sizable chunk of change for me. Don't know about you, but we've got a lot to go over today. Technological advancements that could change the nature of transportation, the future of our climate and our world, and of course the financial implications of the U.S. taking massive student loan losses. But of course, we couldn't dive into all this important content without
TrueChat senior historian and an educator of more than 30 years. Here is your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Well, flying taxis aren't so bad, but I'm not sure you said this. The Army is paying for research for a pilotless flying taxi. So not only are we going to, I'm kind of cool with the Jetsons, you know, I've been waiting for my Jetsons car since I was a little boy. I think it'd be cool to fly through the air like that, but it's a pilotless flying taxi.
That's the part that makes you nervous.
That's the parts that makes me nervous. Yes. Not the flying taxi, but, for this 3-part show. And if you look in the Wall Street Journal, if you have a paper copy, the picture of the flying taxi, today's word is trihedral, Trihedral, trihedral. It is an adjective and it means having 3 sides or faces, a figure formed by 3 lines, each in a different place that intersect at a point. So do a little trihedral action with this 3-part show today, as well as a picture of, looks like 3 parts here of this flying taxi, pilotless flying taxi.
You know, in addition to this trihedral episode, Lance, we ended, or actually, I guess we kicked off the year technically, with an episode this past Saturday, right? So if folks haven't had the opportunity to listen or they missed it, you know, we told them about it last week, but they were busy with the holidays. Hey, it happens. Guess what? It's a podcast, so you can still go back and listen to it. You don't have to,
That's right.
You don't have to be left out. You just go back, and it was on the 2nd, Saturday the 2nd. And it's quite an interesting one. It's a, little different format, Lance, right? But we had a good conversation. And I think if people take an opportunity to go back, it's called The Death of American Politics. It's a fascinating one. So please check that out.
It's a little more free flowing than a normal show.
Today we've got, we've got a lot to get through. So let's get started.
A Northern California startup will become the first maker of novel vertical takeoff and landing craft, providing transportation for the U.S. Armed Services. And what's neat about it is, I like it in this sense, and that is that the military's doing this because they are saying that it's going to take years to develop, but it's basically a race among different countries. And by the military asking for this from this private company, we're going to compete. You know how I feel about competition. I love competition. And so, we're doing this. The military is going to do this so that we can compete with other countries who are trying to develop the same technology.
One of the exciting things as we talk about, the future and what's to come and what's happening right now is the possibility of electric powered planes. Now, the biggest hurdle right now is the distance component, right? A lot of the flights, like when we think of, you're going to go get on an airliner, usually you're going a sizable distance, right? Well, the reason that flying taxis become a realistic opportunity is where these electric vehicles, electric aircraft can really excel is the short distance stuff. And when we say short distance, we're talking about like under 500 miles, so this could be, Lance gets picked up by the daily taxi, here in Urbana, Ohio. And instead of the 50-minute car ride over to Columbus, he gets dropped off downtown, 15 minutes later. So those are kind of the powerful opportunities that I think are exciting about when we look at something like this. Now, of course, the other side that you may find exciting or not so exciting is the fact that it has no pilot. And so, you can haul 4 passengers in this prototype that they've showed us here. It's a 6 electric powered tilt rotors above an egg-shaped body sized for 4 passengers. It's lighter, cheaper, and quieter than conventional helicopters.
If it's pilotless, then it cuts down on costs, right? As far as the company, you don't have to pay somebody. Sure. Plus, you can haul one more person, which increases the profit margin.
And let's just, again, be clear. Obviously, Lance, it terrifies some people, this concept of having these machines out there running around without a human at the helm. But at the same time, statistically speaking, driverless cars prove to be far safer, on the whole than those operated by people.
Your whole argument is very logical, and I can shake my head up and down, and that makes total sense.
But you're still scared.
My ability of control, my need to control things, I just can't sit in the back seat and watch the car go down the road with no driver in it. And if it does make a mistake, I have no ability to correct it. And I think that's a key point here, is that driverless cars are safer. Nobody said they are 100% safe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what people hear. Oh, driverless cars are safer. And then a driverless car has an accident and they say, see, they're not safe. Well, we didn't say they were 100% safe. We said they're safer than if you put a human behind the wheel.
Exactly. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but one of the things that's kind of interesting about this, when we're talking about this flying taxi concept, in many ways, and it's probably counterintuitive, you think about, what does it take to fly a plane? What does it take to drive a car? It seems like it would be more dangerous to be in a plane for lots of reasons. But even with humans, behind the wheel or behind the stick or, in the pilot seat, right? Planes are safer than cars.
Less likely to die in a plane crash than you are driving in your car.
If you're in a plane crash, the chances of fatality are usually almost 100%. But the chance that you're going to be in a crash are significantly less.
You're using my semantics against me, but you are correct. Yes.
I know.
And that's the only reason why anybody's ever been able to talk me into getting on an airplane. Because to me, that's like a driverless car.
Right.
Because I am at, the whim of someone else. How do I know that they didn't have, too good of a time last night, or they didn't fight with their spouse before they got on the plane and they're just in a relatively bad mood, and, I suffer because of it.
The thing that comes to mind, Lance, and I just wish that we had the ability to share this with listeners. We didn't get it on video, but, a number of years back, we were going to be in a parade, and, we had a tour bus for True Chat. And we thought, rather than be in it and try to wave out the windows, we'll just get on top of it, and we'll set some speakers up there. And I didn't even think twice about it. We, get up there and we're like, all right, Lance, we're going up here. And, he was staying close to the ground, but, not a big deal. 'Cause you think a parade moving, 2 or 3 miles an hour, no biggie. Well, this parade was moving out. I mean, we were going along at 10, 15 miles an hour, not secured at all. There's no seats up there. There's no nothing. And, poor Lance, so you can just imagine, if you put him in a plane, a few thousand feet above the ground, not able to fly it.
You said I was staying close to the ground. I was on top of that bus the whole trip.
Yeah, a whole 10 feet in the air.
I stayed on top of that bus. Yep. Uh-huh. But, you talk about this, and just to end it, how you say it's being worked on. It has already attracted significant investment, according to the article, from companies like Boeing, Toyota, Hyundai, and Airbus. So, not all American companies. So that's why the military, again, and as we end this segment, and in all fairness and honesty, this is a big thing, because if we don't get out and lead here, we will be buying this technology from other folks, because other people are developing this. So I think it's an interesting idea, and I'm glad that we are backing something like this so we can be the leader in the technology and not.
Yeah, because that's that whole, it's coming,
footsteps.
whether or not, it doesn't matter if you want it to or not. So do you want to be the ones, to Lance's control point, do you want to be the ones controlling it, or do you want other people to control it? Because that's kind of the option that you're faced with. The military saying, hey, look, we're getting behind this. And this is coming sooner than you might think, folks, because the company's already saying that it anticipates formal FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, safety certification by 2023. So we're talking about, 2 years, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is sooner than you might think. So keep an eye out for it. We're obviously going to keep following it, but we've got to shift gears now and talk a little bit about a big challenge. You probably, those of you listening out there, there's a good chance you recycle. Lots of areas do now, and it's just part of regular life. You got a recycle bin, you got a trash can, and if I throw that piece of paper or that bottle in the recycling, it gets recycled, right? I mean, that's what happens, obviously. I put it in the recycle. Well, maybe not. To find out, keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Consumer product makers are under pressure to pitch in as customers and lawmakers pay more attention to plastic waste. When you put something in the recycling, you assume that it gets recycled. Reality is there's a pretty good chance that unless it's like a plastic bottle, okay, like like something that you might get Coke in, right, or Pepsi or whatever, unless it's one of those things, like a pretty rigid plastic container with some, substance to it, it's probably not being recycled. And that's because it actually costs more to recycle it than it does to make it from scratch. And by the way, the articles we're referencing, we didn't mention this in the first segment, but for those new listeners out there, for those that haven't yet, thestateofus.org, thestateofus.org, that's our website. Head there, check it out. We've got some good resources linked there. You can check out these articles. But that's, I think, one of these things, Lance, that people don't understand about recycling is plastic was never designed to be recycled. And so that's part of this challenge that we run into is people are becoming more aware about this issue with plastic waste and that it just keeps building up and building up and building up. And they're saying, hey, we want to see more recycled plastic in the plastic that we're consuming, And
Right.
so now you've got these companies, right? I mean, that's basically what this article is about. Some of these companies are stepping up and saying, we're going to pay more and buy the recycled plastic rather than the regular stuff.
Well, and, in the old days, correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you say the plastic that you throw in there might not get recycled, what we called it originally, when I remember the first recycling days, it had to have a 1 or a 2 at the bottom of it or on somewhere on the container for you to know that it would get recycled. And then these 5s and 7s and different numbers started popping up because it was cheaper to make those. But then that's what you mean when those aren't getting recycled, correct? I mean, when you talk about if we're comparing it to the original days of recycling, I mean, my 1s and 2s are still getting recycled, right? Or even those aren't getting recycled.
It's reasonable to assume that if I'm in Ohio and I recycle a plastic bottle, that it's going to probably get recycled somewhere in the United States of America. Well, and here's the sad reality of recycling. Much of plastic recycling, the only place where it's economically viable to do it is overseas.
Right.
So we send all of our recycling in this country to one of our ports, typically on the West Coast, load them up on a tanker because shipping prices are ultra cheap. Because why? We import more goods from China than we export. Okay. So the tankers come over here. That's expensive to ship from China to the United States. Ultra cheap to ship in the reverse because these tankers come over and when they head back, they're usually mostly empty.
They'll take any cargo they can to go back just to make a little bit of money to offset the cost of getting back to China for a big shipment of new supplies to the United States.
So it was very cheap to move these over to China. And then you had, some companies in China that would take this and actually be able to turn it at a very slight profit, over. The problem is recently China changed and basically said, we're not going to accept nefarious recycled plastics from the United States.
Right.
Because they found out that recycling plastic is very difficult to do in a healthy way.
Well, but many of us were doing something that I had never heard of before, but I heard it this holiday season. I heard the word wish cycling. We were just taking whatever we had and throwing it in the recycle bin.
Yes.
And we didn't know whether it would be recycled or not. And hopefully that it would. And what China and some of these foreign countries who were taking our recycling realized was we were basically getting rid of trash, getting rid of things that could not be recycled or were not, like you said, a money-making option to recycle. And so they just said in 2018, yeah, we're not taking any more stuff from the United States. So there for a while, there were those stories of floating barges of recyclables out there in the middle of the ocean. But it's like, wow, so I'm recycling stuff and I'm thinking I'm doing a good thing. And then it's turning up in the ocean somewhere.
You're out there and it's like, well, man, should I even be wasting my time to recycle, because if I'm just going to throw it in the recycling bin and then it just gets incinerated or it ends up being dumped in the ocean randomly because we can't figure out how to, economically recycle stuff.
Or put in a landfill and take up space.
Right. I mean, basically it's like I might as well throw it in the trash because at least then hopefully it's not going to end up in the ocean if it goes in the trash, but so here's the deal. The reason that some other countries don't face less of an issue with this is brand owners have to pay toward the cost of managing their packaging waste in some parts of Canada and throughout Europe. And more recently, even emerging markets like India have implemented similar measures. Now, in the United States, for what it's worth, this is not a new concept. Okay. For example, right now, if you've ever had to get a new battery for your car or new tires, you will be familiar with the fact that that you have to pay as part of your, getting one of those things, a recycling fee for those things. There is a charge for recycling the battery. And in fact, and here's the real kicker, if you go to Walmart, right, and you get your tires changed, if you opt to keep your tires, you actually have to pay more than if you opt to have them recycled. And that is an intentional design to keep people from disposing of these things improperly. Okay. So we do it right now. So the question is, well, why don't we do that for other stuff? You think about the amount of packaging waste that Amazon generates, Lance. My God, especially now that COVID's a reality, more people are shopping from home. We're generating tons of this stuff and the companies share no obligation to help get rid of it. It's just left up to us on our end. And I don't know. That's one of those, it's tough because you don't want to, you don't want to crush a business by making them pay, but also at the same time, maybe they're going to choose some different packaging options then, right? Maybe they're going to opt for simpler packaging.
Well, they can do that. Or, as I said to you, well, then they just pass the cost on to the consumer.
Sure.
I mean, just raise the prices. But tell me, how does this play along? Because, I'm so old. I remember buying my soda, what people here in Ohio call pop, but drinking my Coke and Pepsi out of a glass bottle. And I know they still make it that way, but it's now retro, but then I would get money when I took the empties in. Isn't that kind of the same concept we're talking about here? Is that, and I know in some states like Michigan and California, they add the cost to the soda bottle
yes,
to buying the drink in the first place. And then, so you have to take it. So it encourages you to take it back to get your money back.
Right.
So have we just come complete circle? I'm asking this as an old person here. Wouldn't we be better off just to go to glass bottles again that we were recycling anyway and into new Coke bottles or new Pepsi bottles?
Well,
or my personal favorite, RC Cola. You know, because there's nothing better than an RC Cola and a moon pie for the friendly redneck liberal. Or having your RC Cola, putting some Spanish peanuts in it after it's been in the freezer, and then drinking it and eating the peanuts out of it. Oh, you're talking about heaven on a summer night when the humidity's at 85%. You don't know how many Pepsi bottles I've lost forgetting that they were in the freezer.
Oh, God.
And I heard a big pop and I went in there and it exploded all over the place. But if you get it at the right time, it's kind of like a slushie. And then you pour, you know, handfuls of salted peanuts, salted Spanish peanuts into your frozen slushy Pepsi or Coke, and then drink it. And you get the salt with the sweet. It's a very nice summer dessert.
To answer your question, Lance, just to be clear for folks, the answer is yes and no. Okay. In that part of the problem is that a lot of the new waste, and I'm talking about stuff, a lot of it's used in shipping. Okay. Not the cardboard, because actually we can relatively efficiently recycle cardboard if it's not. And here's the thing, like pizza boxes, not good because they got the grease on them. We can't really, you know, we can recycle part of it, but you can't recycle the whole thing because you can't use the stuff that's got the grease. So but generally speaking, the cardboard's not really the big issue. The one of the large issues is all that plastic that's in there to package. You see those inflated air packets, you know?
Right. You
might see that they have a recycling symbol on them, but those are a perfect example of something that people who recycle plastic, they don't want it. And the reason is it's difficult to let a machine sort it. So the only way to get it all sorted out, because Americans, you know, don't have 20 bins in their house for different recyclings, we just throw it all together in most cases. So the only way to get it sorted out is by hand. And as you can imagine, that becomes super expensive. Because there's like 10, you know, to 20 different common types of plastic used in that sort of packaging. And, you know, you got to get enough of it to make money. And you might be spending a few cents per piece of plastic when that piece of plastic is worth 1/1000th of a penny, you know? And so that's where if there are alternative options, right? And it's not so much even the drink industry, you know, that's kind of the deal. You should keep recycling. But we all have to be aware that the more that you can, when you see something in the store that says it's made of recycled products, the more you can buy those things, the more you indicate to brands that this stuff matters, the more likely it is that we can find those alternatives so that we're not using, you know, it doesn't mean you have to quit getting packages delivered, right? It just means that if we as a nation start to take this seriously, we could make some changes that really just make it better for everybody. Because I don't know about you, but I hate those stupid plastic things that are inflated in the boxes. And it's not just because I want to recycle. It's because they're a pain in the butt. You know, it's like, why? Okay, I got to pop these damn things, or, you know, what am I doing
that's
with
cathartic. I like to pop, especially the trihedral ones, you know, that there are 3 of them there, and they lower my blood pressure. I like to pop those.
Bradley's not convinced. We'll have to ask him about the.
He's the medical guy. Isn't it good for my blood pressure to go down?
I said we're going to ask him about that. But if people want to hear Bradley's,
especially if I'm eating moon pies, I mean, I need something to.
If they want to find out the official, non-official medical opinion, and they want to learn about what's going on with student loan losses and why we're going to write off $400 billion that you, me, and Lance are all going to have to pay back, not Bradley, because everything will be free. But you know, you're going to have to keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The Education Department, with the help of 2 private consultants, looked at $1.37 trillion in student loans held by the government at the start of 2020. Their conclusion: borrowers will pay back $935 billion in principal and interest. Well, do the math, folks. That leaves us, the taxpayers, on the hook for $435 billion, according to documents that have been reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. Well, Lance, You know, we sent them to school, and the bill came home, and it's $435 billion. But the real kicker is, it's not for your kids either, is it? And it's not for you. It's for other people who didn't pay back their loans.
When you're looking at a pile of toxic debt, during the last downturn in 2007, 2008, private lenders lost $535 billion in subprime mortgages back in 2008. So when you're talking about that amount of money, $435 billion, that means it's going to hurt the economy. You know, so what do you do about it? I mean, it's going to happen, right? Because that's what, I mean, don't credit card companies put in, they know that so many people,
they're going
to lose so much money. They build that into the system.
But their interest rates are also 25%. And student loan rates by the federal government are, you know, are typically under 10%, right? So, I mean, typically under 5%.
Hear me out here though. So even if we quote don't like this, and it's ironic because I was just on the phone today talking with my daughter who has, you know, doctoral education debts. You know, she's taking out money, and we were talking about how she's going to pay this back. But would it, and I'm just throwing this out there, would it behoove us to write this off? We know we're not going to get, you know, I mean, people study this, right? I mean, it's not like you can't get blood from a turnip. We're not going to get paid back $435 billion, about 25% of the student loan debt that we're giving out. Because it's just not going to happen. It's a fact. So do we go ahead and write it off? Now, the other question is, well, why is this? You know? Well, it's because as you read this article, we don't do any kind of diving into people's monetary situation when we loan them the money for school debt. I mean, it's the only loan that I know you can get other than from Guido down on the corner, where they're not looking into what your financials are. But the article states that to get a student loan, they don't look into your ability to pay it back at all. You know, I don't like this. You know that I think if you take debt, you should be held responsible for it. And I've had some long, hard discussions with former students, and their arguments make sense, you know, to me about, well, but it's keeping them from contributing to society and, you know, buying more products and helping the economy grow. I'm starting to understand that argument. I still don't like it, but if you know you're going to have to write off it as a debt loss anyway, why not just write it off and maybe see some positives from it? I don't know. What do you think?
The thing that I struggle with, Lance, because this is this whole chicken and egg thing that we talk about all the time, right? We got to do something about the current crippling issue with student debt. I 100% agree. At the same time, I don't think that that's not the answer, right? That's just addressing the situation that's before us. The bigger issue is the cost of higher education and its continued increase. That's what we have to, yes, we got to do something about the people that already have the debt. Okay. Absolutely. And maybe part of that is, I mean, we're not maybe, it's happening, you know, just giving up on collecting some of that. But realistically, that can't be the long-term answer, or it's a dumb long-term answer. And that's my biggest problem when we were listening to, you know, this year's, or last year's, I guess now, presidential's election, right? Is on the Democrat side, all this talk about, you know, let's just forgive student loan debt forever and always, you know, and it's like, what? You know, how is that an answer? It's insane. You know, that's not an answer. That's an easy way out crap. You know, we don't want to figure out the right way to fix it. So we're just going to do the easy thing that gets people to vote for us. And that's why we have people, and those tough conversations you've had, Lance, with former students who think that, you know, well, yeah, I loan the money and yes, it's crippling. But I just shouldn't have to pay it back because it's owed to the government. You know, so I just get away with it. And again, I get why we need to do something about the current situation, which I think could include forgiveness of some kind, especially if you meet certain, you know, criteria. But long term, that can't be what we turn to. because then it's just a perpetuating issue. The federal government's not in the business of trying to turn a profit. So, credit card companies are. And I don't think we want to turn the federal government into credit card companies. What's gone wrong where the cost of higher education has spun out of control?
Well, that's what I was going to say, right? The number one problem is we need to force higher education to take a good hard look at itself and figure out why it's so daggone expensive and why costs are going through the roof. Secondly, I think we really need to look at who can get a student loan. But the biggest problem is not who's getting it, but those people who do not finish their college degrees are the ones who have the biggest problems paying it back. And they never finish their education. So the numbers show us then their earning capabilities go down, and yet they still have all this debt. And therein, that's why stuff doesn't get paid back. So we also need to find a way to do a better job of loaning this money. Number one, it's got to be less money that we loan, and higher education has to figure out the bill and how to lower the bill. But secondly, we need to figure out some kind of algorithm to make sure that we're giving the money to people who are going to have the income in the future necessary to pay this back. Because otherwise, eventually, here's the bottom line. If people don't pay it back, it's going to be future generations. There's not going to be any money for them to get to go to school. And that's where we have to talk about this. If people don't pay it back, we just forgive it. Eventually, we're going to run out of money to give people who want an education to get the loan that they're willing to pay back. They'll never get their education in the first place because we'll run out of money to give them.
Bradley, our producer, folks, he's, future, hopefully Dr. Butch in there. So, he's taking all this in, judging Lance and I pretty harshly internally, but of course would never let us know that. What are you making of all of this? I mean, do we just say, you want to be a doctor, Bradley, Lance and I are going to pay for it. And that's just how it's going to be. And, it should be free. Or, we just hardcore, you figure out how to pay for it or you can't get it. I mean, where are you at on this? You're in the system, right? What do you see?
I do not think that you, Lance, or anybody else should pay for the decisions I make. And as someone who is hoping to move on to medical school one day, I am prepared to take on upwards of $250,000 of student loans. And that should not fall on anyone else's shoulders except mine. And it's my responsibility to work hard now in order to pay for that. And there's avenues for me to get that done, right? I can fill out scholarships. I can get academic scholarships from achieving good grades in my undergraduate in order to get some money taken off from my medical school. I could join the military, right? Really, there's no justification that you can give me to help me understand why my choices and my financial burden should be taken off my shoulders and given to the rest of society.
Very capitalistic of our worldly and kind-hearted Bradley. So, but nevertheless, the basic principle of a loan, right? I mean, if I go to Lance and say, "Hey, can you loan me $20?" and Lance says yes, there's an understanding there that I am expected to return that $20 to Lance. And pending my death or something, but really not even that. Cause I don't know about you, but if you owe an institution money, or if you've ever had a family member pass away that owed somebody money, they're not just like, oh, well, they died. So I guess I'll just, I'll forget about it. No. They expect you to pay it then. It's just, I don't know. I mean, yes, credit card companies build that in, Lance, absolutely. But if you've ever been on the collection end of a credit card company, oh my gosh, they will destroy your life to try to collect that money. Now, they may not get it done, but they will try, And we don't, and I'm not suggesting that I don't think the United States government should operate like credit card companies do for any number of moral and ethical and financial reasons. But the point there is still the same of to say that the solution long term is merely to forgive student loan debt is to not look at the root of the problem in the first place, which is that we have to get serious about how we're viewing education, who we're telling to go to college, and what the expectation of people that go to college is. And we got to prop up things like AmeriCorps, Lance, because I'm all for, you got student loan debt and you're looking for a way to pay it off. You want to give 2 years of service to the country and we'll pay down a proportional amount of your loans. 100%. I think that is fantastic. That's exactly what I think it should be the process. Okay. But not, well, you didn't do jack and you're not really giving us anything. And now I have to pay the bill because you couldn't figure it out when you took on the debt in the first place. Again, that's not a sustainable model, not trying to be cold hearted, but we can't do that forever.
It's a short-sighted solution for sure. And, before I start closing here, in true transparency with Bradley, we were part of his college application process and he was accepted to a lot of schools. And one of the decisions he made was how much debt he would incur by going to different schools. So he could have gone, he had a pretty good choice of higher institutions to attend. And he was responsible by saying, well, you know what? If I choose school A, I'm going to have $300,000 worth of debt. If I choose school B, I'm going to have $500,000 of school debt, or I'll choose school A and have $250,000 worth of school debt. So, he looked into this and so it wasn't just haberdashery as he was doing his job of trying to find the right place. But
can that be a word of the day, Lance? Haberdashery?
Haberdashery? You betcha. I'll put that down on a future one. But all this talk of money, all I need now is some RC Cola and a moon pie. And it's a chocolate moon pie, people, not the banana flip kind. They're not good at all. But, if you like, we do this and have this conversation here at True Chat because we have a mission, and our mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And so if you've been listening to today's show and you're sharing it with your friends and family, and they say, well, where can we listen to this interesting dialogue take place? You can tell them, well, you can tune in to Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
The State of Us is a podcast and syndicated radio program. You can get new episodes of the podcast Tuesdays and Thursdays by 4 a.m. Eastern Time. The radio version of our show can be heard on the weekends in select talk markets around the country. So check your local talk stations, see if they have us on. If they don't, call them up. Tell them, hey, get the State of Us. It's the best show I've ever heard. And of course, as Lance pointed out, please invite your friends. That's new year, new resolutions. Help broaden the State of Us family. And that's really how we make an impact with stuff like this. We talked about a lot of different things. The goal is to open people's minds to have those conversations like Lance pointed out. And we're glad that you've opted to join us for yet another year. So we're looking forward to it. Thank you, all of you, for tuning in for the State of Us on True Chat. In Urbana, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to our producer, Bradley Butch, for today's episode. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.